Hello, class. How are you? Now, today, inshallah, we're going to complete reviewing the unit. Today, we have famous historians and the rise of civilization. But let's start first with famous historians. Now, we discussed this before that we have a lot of historians, but these two are the most famous historians in history. The first one we have Herodotus, and we said that he was a Greek historian. This is information we need to know about him. What was his nickname, or what the people used to call him? He was known as the father of history. This is another information we said we need to memorize. The third piece of information that he wrote about the Greek victory over the Persians and presented information about the Persian War, explaining the origins of the conflict. So, what did he write about? He wrote about the Greek victory over the Persians. This is the third piece of information. And number four, we said he traveled to Egypt and wrote a lot about the river Nile. Okay, so he traveled to Egypt, although he was Greek, and wrote a lot about River Nile. Number five, he had a masterpiece. Of course, he wrote a lot of books, but his masterpiece, the best book he has ever written, was called The Histories. Okay, this is about Herodotus. Now we have an Arab historian. His name is Ibn Khaldun. Now, he was an Arab historian, first piece of information. Second, we said he wasn't only, sorry, before the second information, we said also he was not only a historian, he did a lot of things. He wrote about different things. Number two, he was born in Tunisia. We said this information we need to also memorize. Number three, what did he write about? He wrote on the philosophy of history and sociology. Okay, and he of course added a lot and contributed a lot in the advancement of a human civilization and currents of history. Number four, which is the last information that we need to know about Ibn Khaldun, that his masterpiece is called in Arabic Al-Muqaddimah, in English the Introduction. Okay, so this is about the famous historians. Let's go to the workbook. Herodotus was a historian, of course, a Greek, who lived in the 5th century. We did not talk about this, but it's okay. You don't need to memorize it, but he used to live in the 5th century BC. He's known as the father of history. He wrote about the Greek victory over the Persians and presented information about the Persian War. He traveled to Egypt and wrote a lot about the river Nile. His masterpiece is The Histories. Ibn Khaldun was a famous, Arab historian. He was born in Tunisia. He wrote on and sociology. He wrote on philosophy, I guess. Yeah, philosophy of history and sociology. Okay. His masterpiece is the introduction. Okay, memorize it in English. It's going to be easier for you because we call it مقدمة ابن خلدون in Arabic, but in English it is the introduction. Okay, we're going to go now to the second lesson, or the last lesson here, the rise of civilization. How did people change over time? Now, people who lived thousands of years ago used to move all the time. Now, we talked about this. People did not have homes, they did not have a permanent house. They used to move from a place to another looking for food, looking for water, better place, warmer weather, because they didn't have concrete and they didn't build houses to, let's say, have as a shelter from the winter, from the summer. So they just used to move. Oh, it's getting cold, let's move. Okay, so also they were hunters, they were gatherers. They moved from one place to another with no permanent house, looking for food and animals. So what they used to call, they used to be called the nomads. Nomads, as I explained the last time, it means al-badu, people who just keep traveling. They don't have a permanent house. You can find their tents anywhere, anytime, and you don't know why they're here. Okay. So this is the first stage. They started as nomads. Number two, they started to settle down. They started to find a good place for them and like it, and just to stay. I want to stay. How did they decide to stay? They learned how they discovered how to grow food from seeds they found instead of searching for and gathering food. Oh, we found food. No, they started to grow this food actually. Okay. And also, they learned or they discovered how to raise animals instead of hunting in the wild. Let's go look for some sheep. Let's go look for some cows. No, they discovered how could they raise animals and keep them with them. This is number two. Now, number three, they settled down and they learned how to grow food. So they started with farming, but in order to farm the land, they need a special tool or machine to help them farm big land. So they invented something called the plow. The plow is to, as we said, to fix the soil, to make it move in order to farm well. Okay, so the plow also developed farming methods a lot, eventually led to a great change in the way people's life or people life. Okay, and now why farming was important. Now we're gonna stop at stage three now and say why farming was important. Now farming provided people with extra food, extra supply. Okay, the supply that they need with extra, so they started to sell or let's say exchange. People grew more crops, so population increased. So when nomads or other people they just pass by this place, oh, they have food, they have farming land, so they would stay. So the population increased. One family, two, three, four. Suddenly, they started number four. As they settled down, villages have appeared. So this is number four. Nomads, number one. Number two started to settle down, a few people. Number three, they started to farm and count on farming. Number four, as they counted on farming, population grew and villages appeared. Number five, the population grew. Now, it's not a village anymore. Some people do not know each other in this place. So some villages expanded into cities. Okay? So this is the fifth stage. Now, when these cities got bigger and bigger, I'm gonna skip this 1 minute is to complete the stages. Number six, people started to trade. They started something called a tijara among each other. Okay, what is the trade? Which is used to be called bartering. The bartering is to exchange what do you have extra that you don't need for something you need. Oh, I have a lot of apples, like three or four, and you have four bananas. Can I get one banana and you get one apple? You now nowadays you do it in your games, especially Roblox. I think you have a pet that you don't want. I have a pet I want, so we exchange together. So the betraying is very old method, which is if I have something I don't need and you have something I really want, we can just exchange it, and this is used to be called bartering. Okay, this was the final or the sixth method, the sixth sorry stage, and the final one. Okay. Now, before we keep going to what is a civilization and how do we recognize a civilization, now we said some cities grew independently. Where did they grow? They grew in the valleys of Tigris and Euphrates rivers, and we said Dijla al Furat, which usually are basically in Iraq and Syria, the Yellow River, which is in China, the Indus Valley, which is in India, plus Egypt, of course, ancient urban civilizations of Egypt. And it's very known. So they started in Egypt, the independent civilizations and the ancient urban civilizations. The beginning of the urban civilization was in Egypt, India, China, and the Mesopotamia. Okay, Mesopotamia is, as we said, between the two rivers Tigris and Euphrates. Okay, these are the first, as we see here, ancient civilizations in human history. Okay, here they explain what do they mean by civilization. Why did we decide this is the first civilization in Egypt, India, China, Mesopotamia? Why? Because we said civilization, highly organized society, very organized. They know what they have to do, they know their rules, marked by advanced knowledge. They have poets, they have scientists, they have a good army, okay, advanced knowledge. and they know about trade. They have good government. They have art, science, and then, and sometimes the time written language. So they know a lot. This is what we call civilization, not people that they don't know how to read and they know nothing about life. No, this is not a civilization. Civilization, it should have a certain, let's say, features or traits. Now we're going to learn about them. So each civilization, how do we call this a civilization? It has its own identity. Ancient Egypt is different than ancient China, of course. Culture and religion. Each civilization had their own religion. They didn't know Islam or Christianity or Judaism, so they had their own religion. Okay, like in Greek, they had their own gods and goddesses. In Egypt, ancient Egypt, they had their own gods and goddesses, and so on. In India, the same. So a civilization is compiled of 8 features. So if I say what are the 8 features of any civilization in order to call it a civilization, it must contain cities, well-organized government, complex religions, job specialization. As we said, I have a doctor, I have a poet, I have a scientist. Not one person does everything. Okay? Social classes. Social classes means I have high class, which we call usually the nobility, princess, queens, kings, and we have the middle class, people who just work and get money for it, and we have the low class, or we call it the poor people. So if you have social classes, different social classes, not everyone's poor, not everyone is rich, then you have a good civilization. Public works like courts, like theaters, you have a public place to work at. Writings, different writings, art and architecture. Architecture. Okay. Now, art and architecture, it's about the buildings. How they used to build their own homes, their own ruins, their own government, let's say, locations. So this is art. The thing that they used to do, it's called art. Now, and nowadays, for example, you can see الفن المعماري الإسلامي العباسي الأموي. How did we know that? Because they left art in their architecture. Look here, for example, we know this is from Al-Anbad, this is from ancient Egypt. How? From the architecture, the art of the architecture of their own buildings, okay? Now, also, each civilization has its own ruins that are now left, so for us to study, of course, and consider material contributions made by it. So, every civilization, you can recognize the civilization from their ruins. So, you say, oh, pyramids, this is ancient Egypt. Oh, let's say, the amphitheater, مدرج الروماني. Oh, these are the Romans. So from the ruins, you can tell what civilization lived in this place. Okay, let's go now to the book, to the workbook, sorry, to answer these questions. Why were the people who lived thousands of years ago called nomads? Now we said because they used to move from one place to another, looking for food or maybe hunt animals. Why did people start to settle down? Because they discovered how to grow food from seeds. Number two, how to raise animals instead of hunting them. Should we just keep running after animals? No, we will just raise them. How did the invention of the change the people's way of living? How did the plow change it? Because it developed the farming, the agriculture, and in farming a lot, the population grew to villages, to cities, and so on. Mention 3 reasons why farming is so important in human history. We have 3 reasons already in the book. Number one, because it was the main food supply for people, with extra also supply. Number two, we said farming created villages. Before the villages, the population grew because of farming. Number three, of course, villages started to appear with the population growth. Mention 4 ancient civilizations, which are the 4 in our book: ancient Egypt, China, India, and Mesopotamia. What do we mean by civilization? As we said, it's a highly organized society with government, art, scientists, with good knowledge of a trade, and all this definition that we have in the book. which is in here. Let's go back to it. Sorry, here. Here, as we said, civilization, highly organized society, very organized society, has advanced knowledge of trade, government, art, science, and often time written language. All this is civilization. How did trade develop? So, when they farmed a lot of food and they had a lot of things they don't need, they started the trading, we call it bartering, which is exchange things you don't need for things or services that you need, goods or services. List the features of civilizations. We have eight. We said cities, well organized government, complex religion. Also, we had art and architecture. We have also job specialization. We have public works. Let's just go back to the book so I don't forget a thing. Okay, we said that. Social classes and writings. These are the eight features. Put civilization stages of development in chronological order. Okay, now we need to start with where is number one, two, three, four, and so on. Okay, so the first one, I guess, is going to be this one because, as you can see, desert, they are looking for food or hunting animals. So this is picture number one. Number two, they learned how to raise animals. Okay. Number three, they started with farming and developing the way that they used to farm with the plow. And here you can see the machine and the farming really, let's say, improved. Okay. After that, they had extra a lot of things, so they started the trading. Oh no, before the trading, sorry, we had villages. Here's the villages, then cities. Okay, and then we started to trade according to the book, of course, not according to the pictures. Okay, then started the trading or the purchasing, and then of course they invented the money. This is going to be the last stage. Okay, not according to the pictures. These all these pictures are new, all of them. But according to the stages of the book, that's where we get. Okay, and that's it for the book. Let's go to the study sheet. Now I made you the study sheet. It's only 3 pages. Okay, sorry, 4 pages to let's say summarize the whole unit. So first, what is history? Historians. What do they study? The aspects of life. What are the main sources for historians? And then I explained what is primary sources, secondary sources, definition, examples, importance. When writing about ancient civilization, it's hard to find primary sources for 2 reasons. What is archaeology? The archaeologists, what do they study, and what are the remains they study them? Famous archaeological discoveries, the 2 discoveries of the first settlements plus the development of agriculture. Famous historians, the 5 information about Herodotus and 4 about Ibn Khaldun. The rise of civilization stages: 1, nomads, 2, started to settle down, 3, the plow and the development of farming, 4, villages, 5, cities, and the last one's trading, which is bartering and exchanging things. The first ancient civilization here in history, the 4 of them here, and then the last thing, the features of a civilization. How do I know this is it? I didn't include the definition of civilization, okay, which is a highly organized society. No need for all these information. It's enough to know what are the features of a civilization. How did they decide this is a civilization and this is not a civilization? If you have all these features, then you are talking about a civilization. Okay, that's it. Have a wonderful day. Wish you the best in the exam. If you have any question, please send me and don't hesitate. Have a fabulous day.